Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to Shloka a day. Today's Shloka is Shloka number 1 of chapter 14. So chapter 14 is titled Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. If you recall from the Gita Sandesh program, the single word summary is the bars of the jail cell. What is holding a Jivatma back in the material world and preventing them from going into the spiritual world? It is actually the three gunas. So guna traya, three, vibhaga yoga. The three modes of material nature is how Srila Prabhupada has translated the title of this chapter. So what is holding us back in this material world? Why is it that we cannot travel to the spiritual world, go back to the Supreme World? What's preventing us from going back to our original home? It's these three gunas. And how they actually bind you into cycles of karmic actions and reactions and prevent you from making spiritual progress. Of course, for everything there is a solution, and Lord Krishna also talks about the solution in this chapter. But before that, he will actually explain to us how these three gunas, the sattva gun, the raja gun, and the tamo gun, are actually holding us back from connecting to him. Of course, the Lord says that it is better to be in the sattva guna because the sattva guna is a state of some purity which allows you and prepares you to be prepared to receive this divine knowledge that the Lord talked about in chapter 9, Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. How can you receive this divine knowledge that you are Jivatma, that you are the servant of Paramatma, and you are meant to have a relationship with him and offer him your love and affection? So in order to prepare yourself to receive this knowledge, at least at a minimum, you should be at the sattva guna stage. And once you begin to practice bhakti yoga, the Lord will tell us that we have transcended the three gunas and have achieved or are in the stage of Shuddha Sattva Guna, which is you are in the mode of pure goodness. Only if you are in the mode of pure goodness can you actually have a relationship with the Supreme Lord. So before we begin Shloka number 1, let's look at how this particular chapter is structured. So this chapter has 27 verses and it's broken into 3 sections. The first section is all about how the Jivatma or the spirit soul is conditioned by these three gunas. Within that, subsection wise, if you look at it, the first 2 shlokas of this chapter, the Lord is glorifying knowledge. Have you seen a pattern where the Lord glorifies knowledge in the beginning of specific chapters? In the 7th chapter, in the 9th chapter, in the 10th chapter, and now in the 14th chapter, the Lord is always glorifying knowledge. What knowledge? Not mundane knowledge, spiritual knowledge. That going deeper on the spiritual path requires you to access the Vedic scriptures. Then from shlokas 3 and 4, the Lord talks about how the soul comes in touch with matter. Then in shlokas 5 to 9, the Lord summarizes how the three gunas actually bind the soul. And in shlokas 10 to 13, the Lord will talk about the characteristics of how we are dominated under the 3 different gunas. So if you are under the influence of sattva guna, what are the characteristics that you are likely to display? And so on and so forth. So the second section is shlokas 14 to 18, which talks about what happens as a result of coming under the influence of tamogun or rajagun or sattvagun. What happens to you? What is the long-term effect? What is the medium-term effect? What is the immediate effect? And then, of course, what happens if you are under the influence of a particular guna? After death, where are you going to go? And the chapter concludes with the Lord giving us the solution of how to transcend tamogun, rajagun, and sattvagun so that we can be connected to Him. So this knowledge, although it is very technical in nature, is very useful for us to understand how the gunas are actually influencing us and how we can overcome these three gunas. And therefore, hearing is important. Now, from the 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, the Lord talks about the absolute truth and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So 7 to 12 was all about the Supreme Lord. And 13 onwards, we started talking about Prakriti. So the Lord is telling Arjuna here, if one understands this chapter through the process of philosophical speculation, he will come to an understanding of devotional service. In the 13th chapter, it was clearly explained that by humbly developing knowledge, one may possibly be freed from material entanglement. It has also been explained that it is due to association with the modes of nature that the living entity is entangled in this material world. Now, in this chapter, the Supreme Personality explains what those modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how they give liberation. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transferred to the spiritual world. The Lord now explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far, far superior to all other processes of knowledge thus far explained. And knowing this, many attained perfection. But there are some nuances here that we will go over as we go through the shlokas. Right? The Bhakti Yoga section is considered to be the topmost section. In this particular section, the Lord is actually talking about Jnana Yoga. He's not talking about Bhakti. But nevertheless, for the Jnanis, this information is very, very important because they have to use logic and understanding to come to the same conclusion that the Supreme Lord is the object of worship for all of us. So with that, we'll begin shloka number 1. Shri Bhagavan
Shri Bhagavan
Param Bhuyah Pravakshyami
Param Bhuyah Pravakshyami
Jnananam Jnanamuttamam
Jnananam Jnanamuttamam
Yajñātva Munayah Sarve
Yajñātva Munayas Sarve
Param Siddhim Ito Gataha.
Param Siddhimito Gataha.
Word for word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Param,
Param,
transcendental,
transcendental,
Bhuyaha,
Bhuyaha,
again,
again,
Pravakshyami,
Pravakshyami,
I shall speak,
I shall speak,
Jnananam,
Jnananam,
of all knowledge,
of all knowledge,
Jnanam,
Jnanam,
knowledge,
knowledge,
Uttamam,
Uttamam,
the Supreme,
the Supreme,
Yat,
Yat,
which,
which,
Jnatva,
Jnatva,
knowing,
knowing,
Munayaha,
Unayaha,
the sages,
sages,
Sarve,
Sarve,
all,
all,
Param,
Param,
transcendental,
transcendental,
Siddhim,
Siddhim,
perfection,
perfection.
Itaha,
Ittaha,
from this world.
from this world.
Gataha,
Gataha,
attained.
attained.
Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
"Again I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom,
again I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom,
the best of all knowledge,
the best of all knowledge,
knowing which
knowing which
all the sages have attained the supreme perfection."
all the stages have attained the supreme perfection.
So, in the purport, Prabhupada is writing, um, uh, from the 7th chapter to this is something that we read a little earlier, so please forgive me. So we'll go to the some additional commentary here. In the previous chapter, Sri Krishna had explained that all life forms are a combination of soul and matter. He has also elucidated that Prakriti, material nature, is responsible for creating the field of activities for the Purush, the soul. He added that this does not happen independently, but under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is also seated within the body of the living being. In this chapter, he goes on to elaborate in detail about the threefold qualities of material nature, the gunas. By gaining this knowledge and imbibing it into our consciousness as realized wisdom, we can ascend to the highest perfection. So, essentially, in this particular shloka, the Lord is saying that, my dear Arjuna, please listen carefully, because I'm going to give you knowledge that the jnanis actually seek. So this is the actual best of all knowledge. Now, repeatedly, the Lord is using the superlative, the best of knowledge, the topmost of knowledge. He used the same words in chapter 9, in chapter 10, etc. But we have to understand when the Lord is using words, I mean, does that mean that this particular chapter is superior, or rather, the knowledge in this particular chapter that the Lord is revealing is actually superior to what he has talked about in the Bhakti Yoga section? The answer is no. So, when the Lord is using superlatives, we have to understand it in the context. This entire section is the Jnana Yoga section. So, for the Jnanis, understanding how the three gunas actually influences us is very important for them. Is this knowledge equally important for the bhaktas? Not necessarily. The bhaktas are only interested in performing bhakti and not only establishing a relationship with the Supreme Lord, but also progressing on that relationship with that Supreme Lord. So the bhaktas need not be worried about these three gunas and how they influence us. If we know how it operates, it's good, it's nice. But most of us are not conscious of the three gunas and how they are influencing us on a minute by minute, second by second basis throughout our life. It is impossible for us to constantly be aware of which guna is actually influencing us throughout the day. So, right now, in the Brahma Murta, most of us will be under the influence of Sattva. And because we are actually reading the Bhagavad Gita, you could say we are in the Shuddha Sattva Gun right now. But once you drop off this class, then life, what can you call, say, barges in, and you get busy with all of your day-to-day activities. So when you're busy with your day-to-day activities, you could say then maybe you are under the influence of Rajagun. Then sometimes if you're disappointed or upset or have anxiety about certain things, maybe you're coming under the influence of Tamogun. If you're depressed or sorrowful about something, then you have come under the influence of some other gun. So throughout the day, the gunas, Krishna will explain in this particular chapter, are competing to dominate your consciousness. So we should be aware that the gunas are dominating our consciousness. But at the same time, simply by practicing bhakti yoga, we can overcome the dominance of these three gunas. Over a period of time, everything is a journey. It's not a switch that you just turn on and everything becomes perfect all of a sudden. So we have to give ourselves the time and the space to make progress on this spiritual path. So the essence of this particular shloka is, again, as a jnani, this particular section is very, very important. And so the Lord is saying, if you want to understand how to reach me through the process of jnana yoga, then this particular chapter is very important for you. You need, and then Krishna is also saying, you have to understand, Arjuna, that other sages have attained supreme perfection by understanding how the three gunas operate. So remember, Arjuna has been asking questions. So, in response to those questions, the Lord is speaking about the different paths by which you can gradually make progress towards Him. And ultimately, He is the object of our love, He is the object of our affection, He is the goal. But the process itself helps you achieve um, Krishna as you make gradual progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification. If you'd like to join our classes every day, please check the details in the description section of this video. We look forward to serving you.